So welcome back to the New Future Podcast. I'm your host, Luis Duque. Today I have Pat Sweet here with me. I said previous guest in the podcast about a year ago, and he's doing amazing things, launching his new project and just doing a lot of great things in engineering and just creating a lot of great content. Pat, just want to just give us a quick introduction about what you're doing, the engineering leadership project, and all the things that you have going on at this moment.
Yeah, you bet. So, my name is Pat Sweet, and I'm the president of a new organization called the Engineering and Leadership Project. And the whole idea behind this project, this organization, is to help engineers and other technical people bridge the gap, make that transition into becoming successful leaders and managers. My own career has shown me that all too often people get kind of thrown into roles like this because they're really good at what they do, which is being an engineer, or they're really passionate about trying to grow their careers. So someone says, "Okay, great, you become a manager," and then they realize that's a different job. Being a great engineer does not a great manager make. So what I'm trying to do is bring my experience leading engineering teams, large global teams, to other people so that they can learn from my experience and hopefully make that transition more smoothly. Or if they've already made that transition, really hone their skills and get good at that.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great thing. I've been following your podcast for a while, and obviously the website and the blog and all the things you're doing. So it's great to see kind of that you're making that transition, like taking that leap of faith of, okay, I'm gonna go all in on this, and it's gonna be kind of your passion project. We were talking about this just a few minutes ago. Let's start with something that I think is very intriguing to me, and something that it's hard to define. But like, how do you find leadership in the first place?
Oh, how do you define leadership? And this is a super interesting question because it's at once one of these things that you know it when you see it,
Mhm.
but it's really hard to wrap your arms around. So there are a number of different definitions, like academic definitions of leadership. But to me, to be a leader is to have a vision, to pursue it, and to help others do it as well. It's as simple as that. So when you think of the context of an engineering organization, often you are given a defined project: build this bridge, design this road, fix this power plant, whatever the case may be. So it's easy to think that you wouldn't necessarily need leaders in a situation like that. The direction is clear. We all just execute the project. Well, real life has other ideas. And as you well know from your career, there's no end to the complexity, to the ambiguity, to the tension and stress and conflict that can arise in big complex technical projects. And it's critical to have someone on the team who is providing that guidance, who is supporting the team, and who is helping them see the forest for the trees. Because we as engineers spend so much time heads down, concentrated on our technical work that it's hard to orient ourselves from time to time. So it's a very, very important role in our work.
Yeah, and again, it's something that I'm still in the quest for. What really is leadership? How do you develop those traits that you see in leaders, and how do you work towards that? I think that's something that is just so complex, so hard, and it's just basically a case by case scenario. Like these skills that I develop as a leader are going to be different than skills you develop as a leader, and how people see you as a leader is going to be different from other leaders in our society. So something that I get asked a lot, and something I try to practice and try to pursue a lot is how, like a young engineer trying to come up from college where they're basically spoon fed all the material, they just have a lot of guidance. How do they start develop those traits that are gonna get them to a leadership position or just become leaders within their work or even the community?
It's a really, really good question. And there's something that if people walk away from this conversation understanding anything, that this would probably be it. Leadership and management are different things. Becoming a manager, that's a position in an organization that someone else decides you get to be a manager. You lead that department, you lead that project as a manager. Leadership itself is something that anyone can practice. It's a set of skills and behaviors and aptitudes and a way of thinking about the world and interacting with the world. No one can give you that. No one can take that away from you. And that represents a huge opportunity, especially for younger engineers who are never going to be handed a management role. That doesn't matter. You can still be a leader, you can still develop leadership skills. And you already mentioned one of my favorite ways of doing that, of developing those skills, is developing them in the community. If you
Mhm.
walk out the door to your nearest church, homeless shelter, community group, youth organization, these are places that are really struggling to do everything they want to do and need people to step up. So you can volunteer and be a leader today and develop these skills in a real context. And the beauty of that is that it's applied. You learn to do by doing. And you'd be shocked at how well this translates back into the office, how much you can learn and apply in an organizational context. One of the other things that I like to recommend to people, Luis, is that it can be infectious when someone has a vision. And this can seem a little bit daunting, particularly for younger engineers. Like, what does it mean to be visionary, and how do I share my vision with people who've been in the industry for 35 years, 40 years? And the thing about vision is you don't have to be an Elon Musk type. You don't need to be that over the top. All having a vision is having a sense for what a better future could look like, how it could feel. And particularly when you come out of school, you're not tainted by the experience of quote unquote the real world. You haven't yet bumped up against the hard edges of life, meaning you have this opportunity to be a bit idealistic. You have these things that you learned at school that, frankly, many of your senior colleagues have never even heard of before. There's this huge opportunity for you to bring new ideas on how things could be done differently or better or adopt new technology. It honestly, early in your career is one of the best times to be sharing this kind of stuff with others, and even just having a sense within yourself what the future could look like for your own career, for your own team, and sharing those ideas can really establish you as a leader within a group very, very quickly.
And I guess, how was that transition for you? I mean, you obviously were a technical person some time ago, then became a technical leader and maybe a manager, if that's the case. How was that transition for you, and what did you learn during those first few months when you were gaining this new role and new experience?
I'll tell you a quick story from the day of my first real promotion into a formal leadership role. I was given this title. I was the lead electrical engineer on a big rail development contract, and it's something I'd been chasing for a long time. And I remember I remember it all like it was yesterday. Coming back from the meeting where it was announced that I was promoted. Good for you, Pat. Pat's going to help out with this, that, and the other thing. I was feeling high on life. It was great. And I remember getting to my desk and someone popping by and asking a question. And I don't even remember what the question was, but I remember it was a decision that I had to make on a technical item that really I didn't have the background in. I was an electrical engineer. This guy was an HVAC guy, and I froze. It was deer in headlights, and it was, oh man, I'm gonna have to deal with this now, and feeling totally overwhelmed by it, despite wanting it, despite chasing it, despite preparing for it. That was one of the big lessons learned, is that you are as a leader going to be expected to make decisions that are outside of your comfort zone. And the sooner you realize that that's okay, and the sooner you realize that it's okay not to have an answer right now and to go to the right people to try to gather those answers, the better. So yeah, it was jarring. It was really jarring, and it took a long time for me to have my heart rate kind of slow down when unfamiliar people came to my desk for advice. it it takes a lot of getting used to be in a position like that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I think different than just being someone that just works in the calculations, kind of behind the scenes of kind of the project and everything. And I feel like there's probably nothing that will teach you how to become a great manager, a great leader. There's not like a handbook or something that it's out there for you to just follow step by step. Like if they ask you this question, this is the answer you have to give them, or like just the procedure. It's gonna be new experience, and you're gonna learn kind of on the job, and trying to figure out what's the next stage and what's the next question when I get asked, and how am I gonna approach the problem. It's a complete different mindset. I feel like.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And you touched on something that reminds me of another story. When I was first in my first people manager role, I was assigned a buddy, someone who had been a people manager for quite a while. It was a great system because it gave me someone to go to ask questions, get advice, understand what button to press on the timesheet, or how to
Mhm.
navigate a salary negotiation and everything in between. It was wonderful. And I remember the day I asked for the handbook, and there was a moment, there was this pregnant pause, this silence, and I thought my phone had died, and then my mentor starts laughing, and it is uncontrollable. He said, "Pat, there is no handbook. How? What makes you think there'd be a handbook?" And in my naive kind of junior manager's frame of mind, well, shouldn't there be a handbook? Shouldn't there be some guide somewhere to help you navigate all this new stuff? Which, looking back on, I realized just how naive that was. But yeah, that was the mindset at the time. Is it's a new job, I must get the tools, and I'll figure it out. But yeah, it's a totally different world.
Yeah, I mean, as a great engineer, just kind of looking for just like the procedure, the processes to learn this new skill that you're trying to develop. I think that's an approach that I think a lot of people, especially in engineering, kind of try to take when they're taking a new role, a new position, especially if it's leadership. You're trying to figure out what are the processes that are going to get you to be great at that role.
Yeah, of
I think
course.
one of the things you've done great is just, and I think a lot of people should do more of, is having those practicing those skills before you actually get to that position. Because I think with engineering leadership, I'm sure this started way before you actually became a leader, and has developed those skills. And I think it's done also similar things for me with engineering future. How was that? How did that help you kind of get trained and get the skills that you needed to just be great at that position?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and you're right. I When I started engineering and leadership.com, this was in 2012. This is well before I was in any formal leadership position, but I had identified that that was the path that I wanted my career to take.
Hmm.
So what I started doing is I started collecting lessons learned. And in a lot of ways, it was a blog I was writing for myself. It was a way to document and organize and capture my thoughts, what worked, what didn't. Whenever I saw something interesting at work, the way a leader I respected handled something, okay, well that goes in the blog. And I had that added benefit of sharing things with people outside myself. So even just having that dedicated venue to reflect and capture lessons learned was supremely valuable because it forces you to think. That active reflection or journaling is powerful for this as well. It's like a public journal is what it was ultimately. And one of the interesting things that happened was that having that blog, putting my thoughts and ideas out in the world, gave me the opportunity to write for others as well. And writing for others provided credibility, which helped me at the end of the day get some of my first formal leadership roles. It was this really fascinating virtuous cycle that built on itself, because I demonstrated that I was interested in this, I was paying attention, and I was learning as I went. So yeah, it absolutely it was a seed that really helped bear an awful lot of fruit down the road for sure.
I don't know if you get like this same mindset, but when I started creating content for the podcast, the blog, everything, the way I consume content is completely different than I did before I had to create the content. Because now I'm looking for ways to either rephrase certain productivity tools or techniques, or capturing ideas from different people and combining and creating my own ideas. How has that process been for you, from just consuming without really putting the attention into, from from doing that then to consuming, taking the content, internalizing it, and then creating some content after that?
I think one of the things that has changed in a pretty significant way is I pay much closer attention to the creator of the
Hmm.
content. So if there's a podcast I listen to or an article I stumble upon on LinkedIn, whatever the case may be, if I like it, then I get really interested in what else does this person do? What else have they published or produced or written? And what I like about that is I like to get to know the people behind the keyboard or the mic because there's so much you can learn from these people. And what I like to do is I like to try to have conversation just like this to really get to know someone who, frankly, if you're taking the time to share your expertise, your knowledge with the world around you, you're probably someone I am interested in speaking with. Your heart's in a wonderful uh, fruitful place you've got this mindset of abundance clearly, and I want to get to know you. And through that, I find I dive much deeper into material, and I'll read 4, 5, 6 articles from the same person and start to see patterns or start to
Hmm.
see ideas emerge. So, being on the this side of the microphone myself, I've started to appreciate just how much work it is to put on a great show like you're putting on now. So it really it changes my relationship to the material in that I knowing how much effort has gone into it, I can't help but pay really close attention and really read um, with an eye to understand both the content and the person who created it.
Yeah, and I think like you said, it just takes a lot of time, and until you're actually doing creating the content, you can't realize how much time it takes to write an article, record a podcast, a video, or something online. You just kind of see the final product. Hopefully, it seems effortless, and that's the way you transmit information. But there's a lot of work behind the scenes. There's a lot of things that need to be figured out, and I think um, more people should be doing that content creation side of it because I think we all benefit from it. There will never be enough podcasts. There will never be enough blogs, enough YouTube channels. The more people start taking ideas, turning them into their own, and sharing them, I think that's where we all benefit from it. And I think going from engineering, that's how we've evolved the profession over the years. As a structural engineer, you do a lot of research, you test materials, you test structures, and then you come out with something that hopefully will be used in the future. And then someone else comes and picks it up where you left it off, and that's how we evolved. What are some things that you find with your engineering and leadership project now that are helping you take your career to the next level and take your skills and your leadership skills to the next level, and how can other people take what you've done and learn from it and apply that in the future?
I learned something recently from someone I consider a friendtor. So someone I really enjoy spending time with, but also learn an awful lot from is a gentleman by the name of Steve Foreign, who really interesting man. He was a former engineer himself, and has his own organization with the goal of creating 1 billion happier people. It's a really cool project that he's got. And one of the things that he taught me was the importance of having interesting conversations. And this is one of his core measures of success is for him it's less about dollars in the door or courses sold or the number of keynotes he's delivered. He really feels like if he's having interesting conversations, he's growing personally and professionally,
Mhm.
and certainly, yeah, making connections, and from that business will come. But more importantly, is that element of personal growth. And this is something that I've really taken to heart. And the more chances I get to do things like this, or meet up with people for coffee, the happier I am. And I know I'm learning, I know I'm growing, and I know the business side will well, it never really fully takes care of itself, but I'm feeding the furnace with the right stuff, with meeting great people and learning. Um, Now, the flip side to that as well, and this is something I would caution people is please do take that advice. Go hang out with interesting people and don't expect any one particular thing to come out of it. Don't go in with an ask. Go in with an open ear. And the only other thing that I would say is look for opportunities to serve. If you can return the favor by doing something kind or lending advice or support or whatever you can to the people that you do interact with, the rest will sort itself out. Whether you're running a business or growing a career in engineering, this is something that applies across the board.
Yeah, I think that that's super true. And again, that's gonna be my mantra since I started the podcast. I'm not expecting this to become my full-time job anytime soon. I don't even know if I want that in the future. I'm taking each interview at a time, learning from the guests, learning what makes them successful, and hopefully the people that are listening are taking value from it and are learning along with me. Because obviously I'm still pretty young, I'm still learning, I'm still trying to figure out all of these. So by talking with people like you that are a few steps ahead of me, that have done similar things and are now kind of in the next stage of this kind of project, it's kind of interesting to me to hear kind of what took you there. Is just basically having those conversations, just focusing on creating the best content you can. Because at the end of the day, I just want to put something out there that I'm proud of, rather than something that I think or I know is gonna either make me money or find or reach millions of people. I just want to make something I'm proud of, and at the end of the day, those other things kind of take care of itself. Something I'm kind of curious is that transition from kind of working as an employee, now working as a solopreneur, something that someone that is basically giving tasks to yourself, or moving to that leadership transition from someone that maybe follow directions now to just basically is doing everything by yourself and trying to figure out what's next step. How was that transition? How you're learning along the way?
Yeah, and this is a big one, and this is a big one, and this is something that I I approached this entrepreneurial project with a bit of a curiosity about how that would work. How, for the first time in my career, I'm managing myself completely. Yeah, yeah, of course, every professional needs to manage their own work and their careers and all the rest. But for the first time, there's no boss, there's no annual review other than with myself. So one of the things that I did right off the bat is I set some very clear goals for myself, and it, took those frankly to my wife and my daughter. And I said, "Okay, folks, this is what my plan is for this year. This is what success looks like." And one of my measures of success is every Friday I get a score out of 7 from my wife and my 7-year-old daughter and say, "How happy are you guys with what's going on? How happy do you perceive me to be with what's going on? And do you support this continuing?" And the reason that this is important is twofold. One is that one of the things I value most is family. So it's super important to me that my under the same roof board of directors is on board with what's going on.
Yeah.
The other thing is that forces accountability. It's not just me existing in my own head deciding whether or not things are going well. Now I've looped in people I care about, people I respect, people I trust to provide that sober second thought. And that's really important. There's lots of different ways of doing that. So, for example, when I have coaching clients, part of the reason that clients want a coach is they want that accountability. They want to know that someone else cares, that someone else is paying attention, that someone else will help them maintain that accountability. Because when you're stretching for something big, you'll hit difficult spots. There will be a dip in your motivation, in your energy, and to have someone else there who is paying attention is incredibly motivating. So having those goals, having that external influence has been super important, and so far so good. It's worked very well.
Yeah, I think that I see that even me just doing this kind of part time whenever I have the free time is hard to figure out what's next. Like I finished an interview, like what's the next step? Like do I need to focus maybe on finding the next guest, brainstorm ideas, working on some admin tasks, working on finding uh, new people to work with? It's just kind of a never ending list of things that I know I want to do, but at the end of the day, there's not enough time to do all of these things. So I need to focus on the most important thing and try to just be more efficient and doing that. Um, how has that reflected on now that you have maybe more time than you used to? And how are you changing that mindset of, okay, I just have a limited amount of time. What's the next most important thing to do?
Yeah, it's another really good question. And I guess I've got two basic answers to that. And one is that at a macro level over the course of the year, like I said, I've got goals for the year. And once I established those goals and made sure that my little board of directors
Mhm.
was on board with that, I created a plan for the year. So I know in general the projects that I'd like to pursue, the people I'd like to speak with, and the things I would like to do in general. So I've got a roadmap for myself to kind of keep me between the rails, so to speak. Now, where things get tricky is when you zoom in to what a week looks like. Well, any given week could look different. Personally, I'd probably be happiest with a really regimented schedule, and I would know hour by hour what I'm going to devote my time to. But where so much of my work interacts with the outside world, like we just said, I love talking with interesting people. I interview people from around the world for my own podcast. My regimented schedule is not going to survive bumping up against that external reality. So from week to week, it looks a bit different. One of the things that I like to do to try to navigate that is as much routine as I can build in, the better, because what that does is that removes decision making and that improves consistency and quality. So, for example, and you already do this, Lewis, to some extent. You've got a process set up for how you onboard people to your podcast, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot that's automated, the reminders, and please fill out this form. It's brilliant, and I look for opportunities to do that on a business level. And so one of the examples of that is I've contracted my younger brother to help edit the podcast. He's really good at this stuff, and we've got a process set up. He knows when to expect the next interview to arrive in the Google Drive that we've shared. There's a document that exists for lessons learned where he can provide feedback to me to let me know how bad I stutter when I ask questions. And it's this whole system that we've developed that now we don't need to trade an email, and it's brilliant. So the more you can do that, the better, and that provides a little bit of room for those things that can't be planned for, that can't necessarily be routinized. Very, very helpful. Now,
Yeah.
I say all this, um, bear in mind the fact that this is still a new venture, and I'm still figuring out which routines that I need to be executing. I've not yet had tax time show up for my business for the first time, so there are things that I'm sure I will learn along the way. That I really wish I had done X, and that's okay. That's okay. That's what lessons learned are for, and that's what building experience is all about.
Yeah, I think that's something I know last time we talked about as well was as engineers, I think we're good at setting up those processes and trying to automate as much as we can. I think that's something, again, with the limited time that I have to do all of these, the more I can just sit back and let algorithms and apps and things work for me and make all that happen without me even have to touch in my computer. I think the more I will make progress towards the other goals that I have in terms of creating courses, coaching clients, just all the things that I want to be doing, interacting with people, actually recording an interview. It's going to give me more time to do all of those things that I really enjoy. So I think that's something that is crucial, especially if you're tight on time or you have other things that maybe are you enjoy more doing. Like I don't really enjoy uh, reaching out to guests, sending them emails, following them up, trying to schedule a call, following up on the call. Those are things that I'd rather use Calendly and use my website and use things like that that are gonna just automatically get it all that information and get it where to the point where we're here and I didn't have to do anything after I sent that initial email. So very, very important and something I wish I did more in the beginning, but I'm doing more and incorporating all that stuff in. Do you have any last advice for people in terms of transitioning to a leadership position? Some of your experiences as an engineer that moved into a leadership role and now doing your own thing. What are some of those things that you want to leave us with in terms of that transition into leadership, I think is so hard and important to do.
Yeah, two things that come to mind right away. What one is not to rush it. And I know looking back in my own career, I probably would have benefited from spending a little bit more time in a technical role. I was gung ho, I was excited, I was ambitious, and I was going for it, and it all worked out. And for someone whose career was destined for leadership and management, that worked out pretty well. What I would say though is, while you don't need to be the best technical mind in the room to be a great manager or leader, you really don't. You absolutely need to be competent. You need to know what you're
Mhm.
talking about. Even if you're not a world-class expert, you really do need that solid grounding. And early in your career is the very best time to do that, because as you progress, particularly if you're in an organization or an industry where you get billed out at an hourly rate to your company's clients, the best time to get that technical work experience in is when your charge out rate is low. Then you
Yep.
can kind of afford to make mistakes and learn and figure things out. The second thing that I would say is, once you are at a stage in your career where it makes sense to transition into a leadership role or a formal management role, find a mentor or find a coach. Find someone who you can confide in and ask really honest questions to. And luckily, most organizations either accommodate for this, or you at least have senior folks who are more than willing to lend an ear. And if for whatever reason you're not comfortable with that, or the situation doesn't allow for it, increasingly there are external coaches, folks like me, who are more than happy to take you on and take you under our wing to help you along with that. But it's very, very important. Don't go it alone. You will run into problems, and you'll find that many of the most intractable problems that you face in your career as an engineer are not going to be the technical problems. They're going to be people problems, conflict, and stress, and uh, poor mismatched teams. There's all sorts that you can run into that frankly are very, very difficult. And having the external perspective and a helping hand is extremely valuable.
Yeah, I think that that's super true, and something you said there. You at the end that you're managing people, you're leading people. While the processes and knowing your stuff is really important, you need to you need to learn how to interact with people and be someone that can manage people, because that's what the end goal is: taking people and leading them through challenges and goals, and kind of getting them to that position. What are some books that you recommend to engineers, to non-engineers, to develop those skills of becoming a great manager, and I think ultimately just becoming a great leader?
Wow, that it's hard to know where to even start with that. I there's there's really, really good stuff. One of the I'll recommend a leadership author whose work is just phenomenal, is Brene Brown, whose whole body of research relates to daring leadership, being courageous, being comfortable enough with awkward situations, and really confronting the facts. It's really, really important stuff, and it's brilliantly written. It's readable. She swears. It's the kind of stuff that you really feel like you're talking to a real person, as opposed to the brilliant academic that she really is. Um, and I would say the other person that I would recommend would be Jim Collins, who's written some of the greatest business and leadership books of all time. Good to Great, in particular, is a phenomenal read. As is Great by Choice. And Great by Choice is good for leadership, because it really points out the decisions and the thought process behind some of the world's greatest leaders and leadership stories. And what it shows is that success really more is a matter of the way you perceive the world and the way you think than you might expect. And that's a very powerful realization for for everyday working people like you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are some great titles. I'm gonna add a few more to my reading list because they're I haven't heard a couple of those. So, great, I mean, great advice in terms of books. Great advice in terms of everything you're doing. I just want to acknowledge the great work that you're doing to create this content, to put it out there, all your experience, and just I can tell you really care about helping others with your podcast, with coaching, with everything you're doing. So I just want to take just some time to acknowledge that and just I'm very glad you came here to the podcast to share all that information. I just have one last question for you, and that's how can we continue engineering our future?
Oh, well, listen, I would love to be part of that, right? And this is this is why I do what I do, is to help people like the folks who are listening to this show right now. And you know, engineering your future, I think, is about making conscious choices related to what your life and your career are going to look like. This is something that I feel very passionate about, is taking the reins on your own career, your own life, and setting strong goals and pursuing them. And to that end, I'd be thrilled to have people visit the website at engineeringandleadership.com. That's where you'll find I've got free books and the podcast and articles, all sorts of really good stuff. And in particular, I'll point people toward a free book that they can download. It's called Engineering Leadership 101, which is exactly what it sounds. It's filled with practical advice that you can take and use no matter where you are in your career. If you'd like to grow or begin your leadership journey, that's a great read. And you download it for free at engineeringandleadership.com/leadership101.
Yeah, that's great. And again, being part of this journey, helping other people, I think that's how we continue to grow and continue to improve ourselves as well as others. So again, thank you for coming to the podcast. It was just great talking to you. Where can people connect with you, reach out to you if they have more questions beyond just visiting the website and listening to the podcast?
Yeah, I'm very, very active on LinkedIn right now, and and you can find a link to my profile from the website. And I'm also on Twitter at EngiLeader.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming up to the podcast. Again, it's just always a pleasure to just connect with you, talk about leadership, and talk about all the things you're doing. So thank you, and I'll talk to you later.
Likewise, thanks so much.